strategic assessment of the US today is positive, which was not always the case before. On the American side, I think a much greater willingness to partner with a country like India, which is not a member of an alliance or a treaty partner. You've actually, and you can see that today in the Quad, but in the bilateral India-US relationship as well. So you can see the defense side of it, the security side of it, the political side of it, the diplomatic side of it, play out. The second is, of course, the economic convergences, and there, I think particularly the technology side has been strong, but I would suggest to you it will get much stronger in an era in a digital era, in an AI era. I think there's a much greater possibility of a coming together of our economies. And the third would be really, in a sense, I would say the societal part of the relationship. That if one looks today at the Indian community, the Indian-American community, the bridge that it constitutes, and in many ways it's been a very unique community in the US that it's kept its links with its home country very strong. And that has been a very big asset to the relationship. So I would really say very objectively that, India, the change in India-US ties, it's been very significant in the last, maybe I'd say 20 years plus, 25 years, but definitely it's come into its own in the last decade. And you can, I can give you a range of examples. And the most obvious one would be even in defense, that a country which, where we had virtually no military relationship for 40 years, from 1965 till 2006.
So many American companies are de-risking, diversifying, moving out of China, looking for alternatives. There are a lot of them knocking on India's door. But could you talk to us a little bit about, you mentioned earlier, India dealing with obstacles and overcoming barriers of the past. What are some of the obstacles that your government is addressing to facilitate investment and business opportunities, market access by Western and American companies?
Look, good question. I would say it begins first with the acceptance that we have challenges. And I think that realization has been very fundamental to the policies of the Modi government. So if you go back to 2014, there's a very determined attempt starting then, but continues to this day, to make it easier to do business in India in different ways, in making the procedural part of it, policy part of it, but also providing the infrastructure for businesses to come in. So we kind of take it in three parts. One, what we call making it easier to do business. Second, what could be described as easier to live or easier to function in India. So cutting the paperwork, making the processes of approvals easier. And the third is actually the infrastructure development. There's been a very significant infrastructure improvement in India. So, you're talking today of an economy which is building about 25 to 30 kilometers of highway every day. And if you take the number of airports in the last 10 years, they've doubled. If one looks at, the railway movement, that has improved. The turnaround times in ports have improved. The number of industrial estates have grown. So you need a combination of all of these really to attract business. And I think it's worked to a large measure, but there are, there's obviously great scope for further improvement. And if I look back at the last 100 days, today is the 24th, right? So we are 107 days into the third term of Prime Minister Modi. And in the first 100 days, among the big initiatives that were taken were the idea that there'll be 12 big industrial nodes in India, where we would actually create environment for making it easier for manufacturing to set up shop in India. To doubling down of investments on rail, road, and ports, particularly ports, and connect it with the industrial nodes. And along with that, a big program to skill human resources to meet, the needs of industry at this point of time. So we're taking it very seriously. For us, this has been really, I would say, thrust area of the foremost priority.
Fascinating. Just stepping back to the Quad, which you mentioned, and your overall remarks about the emergence of more both regionalism and multipolarity. I wrestle with what seems, to me at least, as something of a conundrum of India's simultaneous active membership in both the Quad and the BRICS, and for that matter, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization.
We can chew gum and walk at the same time.
All right, but can you be all things to all people and all regions? Does that really work?
Look, it's not that we are all things to all people. We are ourselves to all people.
You made the case for maintaining a strong economic relationship with Russia because of historical roots. As India emerges as a global economic and political power, with that will come also increased responsibilities on the global stage, obviously. So my question to you is, what is India going to do to help us solve the problem in Russia, Ukraine?
The first question, look, we stepped forward in respect of Sri Lanka when it was facing a very deep economic crisis, and very frankly, when nobody else came forward. And I'm very glad we did it. We did it in a timely manner. We did it on scale. We put out $4.5 billion effectively. And what it did was it stabilized the Sri Lankan economy, and the rest of it was up to them. Now, at the time we did it, it was not that we had a political conditionality which accompanied that. I mean, we were doing it as a good neighbor who did not want to see that kind of economic meltdown at our doorstep. So I think what happens politically in Sri Lanka, that's for their politics to work out. I mean, at the end of the day, each one of our neighbors would have, their own particular dynamics. It's not our intention to, to suggest that their dynamics must necessarily, adhere to what we might consider as being better for us. I think this is a real world. I mean, everybody makes their choices, and then countries adjust to each other and find ways of working it out. In the case of Bangladesh, I would say it's a little bit different. What we have done over the last, particularly over the last decade, is to do projects of various kinds which have been good for both of us. That, economic activity overall has picked up, logistics of that region has improved, and I think, both countries have gained a lot out of that. So I'm would urge you not to be deterministic about it. It's not as though India is seeking to control every political move of every neighbor. That's not how it works. It doesn't work, not just for us, it doesn't work for anybody else. I mean, every country will have its own dynamics, and in foreign policy, you try to read it, you try to anticipate it, you also respond to it. And I'm very confident at the end of it all, in our neighborhood, the realities of interdependence, of mutual benefit, of the fact that our ability to get along will serve both our interests, those realities will assert themselves. That's been the history. Look over the last few years. I mean, every few years something happens in our region and people suggest that there is some kind of irretrievable situation out there. You then see the correctives beginning to manifest themselves. I'm suggesting that we had, traditionally a strong relationship, and the future of the relationship also, there are benefits for us. So it's not just a look back, it's also a look ahead. But on the war that's going on, we believe that wars are not the way of settling disputes. Two, we don't believe that a solution is going to come from the battlefield. Three, that we think, at some point there will be a negotiation, and such a negotiation has to obviously include the parties. It cannot be a one-sided negotiation. And from those assessments, we have been engaging both the Russian government and the Ukrainian government in Moscow and in Kiev and in other places to see whether there is something we can do which would hasten the end of the conflict and initiate some kind of serious negotiation between that. This is a kind of exploration that we have been doing. I mean, it's not that we have a peace plan. We are not suggesting anything. We are having these conversations and sharing these conversations with the other side. My sense is both sides appreciate it. So if we look at the last few months, Prime Minister Modi met President Zelensky in June. He met President Putin in July. He met President Zelensky again in August. This month we've had contacts. Our NSA had met President Putin. And yesterday, Prime Minister Modi met Zelensky again. So we think if these conversations are helpful and there's something we can do, and there are not that many countries and that many leaders today who have the ability or the willingness to engage both Moscow and Kiev at the same time, I think we could make a contribution. And certainly, I think there is a widespread feeling in many parts of the world that, the sooner the conflict ends, the better it is for the global economy and society.